come in. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Partnership with Parents. I see everyone's coming in right now. So we have hi, Bethany. Hi, Katie. Menasha. Mr. Buffone, good to see you today, Dr. Buffone. Sarah, good to see you as well. Wonderful. How about we wait just another minute or two, Sarah and Teresa, just to make sure everybody that wants to be here is here for our partnership series.
That's great. I say let's get started, Val.
Sounds good.
What do you think? Okay, that's great. Welcome, everybody. My name is Teresa Kalchek, and I am the director of the Center for Multisensory Learning at Wheeling Country Day School. We're located in Wheeling, West Virginia. And Sarah and I are super excited to come back this year. And there's no greater time to start this parent partnership webinar than now, this month, because October is Dyslexia Awareness Month. So Sarah and I have some great ideas for every month. We're going to meet the third Wednesday or Thursday of each month. But we are going to put that out early enough so that you can mark your calendars. So welcome, everyone, because I'm going to turn it over to Sarah so she can introduce herself and our speaker today. Sarah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're so happy you're joining us. I'm Sarah Sora. I'm the director of the Dyslexia Center and Learning Lab at the campus school at Carlow University, located right on the campus. I am so pleased and proud to have Val with us today. She has been just an unbelievable, amazing resource for our school, and honestly, I don't know what we would have done without her. I'll tell you a little bit about Val. She has been in education for over 20 years. She has been a classroom teacher, a literacy specialist, a Title I teacher, and a member of an administrative team. She is a teacher consultant for the Western Pennsylvania Writing Project and founding director of a hub of that project called Writers of Westmoreland. Val is a reading specialist and an instructor at Carlow University and the director of the MED in Reading Specialist program. Sit back, everybody. It's going to be a while. Val is also a national letters trainer for Voyager Sopris Learning. She is a strong advocate for teachers having access and knowledge to implement evidence-based curricula and assessments, including ongoing support for using these tools in the classroom, which is so important, and she helped us so much with that here at the campus lab school. Val also advocates for evidence-based intervention and for appropriate intervention times so that all children can learn to read and write. And she has just taught me so much about this, and we're so happy to have her here with us today. So here you go.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sarah and Teresa. I just love working with you all too. It's so good to be here with you at lunchtime with our Parents as Partner series. As Sarah mentioned, I was Title I interventionist for many, many years, and I loved working with parents in family engagement opportunities. So I'm happy to be here with you today. I know we have both parents and teachers and administrators in the room, so we're all here to help all students become proficient readers. So today we're going to focus on the importance of oral language development. This is just me. Here I am. If you're not from Pittsburgh, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we are actually the fourth dreariest city in America. Did you know that? Seattle, Washington is #1. We used to be second, believe it or not, but right now we're fourth. We must have a better sun index, but I don't know if you're in Pittsburgh right now, but I'm looking out the window and it's gray. So good to be with you today. We are going to spotlight oral language, Dyslexia Awareness Month. There's a lot that I'm going to try to fit into one short hour with you today. So our agenda for today, this 1 hour, we're going to consider the importance of oral language development. And I hope when you leave today, you have a better understanding on your part in oral language development for your child and or the students that you're servicing. We're just going to briefly touch upon one theoretical model that we use in education when teaching our students, and it's the simple view of reading. I'm just going to go into that a little bit just to kind of explain the work that we're doing. I'm going to give an overview of the developmental milestones, birth to age 5 first, so you can kind of see how this all happens from 0 to 5. And then I'll move us into where we may be today with our students and our children in whatever grade level they are, and what we can do to support their oral language development through their years. And then we're going to discuss just some different ways that we can continue to work with our child and with our students to make sure that they're on track to be successful readers. And we'll take some time for questions, hopefully, at the end as well. So let's get started. So first, we're just going to explore a little study, and it's the impact of oral language development through a very prominent study. Many of you may have heard of this study, the Hurt and Risley study, but basically the findings of this study are this. Spoken vocabularies of children from professional families, now I'll unpack this a little bit for you, were significantly larger than vocabularies used by parents in lower socioeconomic homes. Now I'm going to go into this with you and tell where you come in for this. So what does this all mean? This is fascinating. So it means that by age 3, vocabularies of young children from professional families were larger than the vocabularies used by the parents in low socioeconomic families. Here's another one. By age 3, vocabulary was strongly correlated, now look at this, to reading comprehension scores in 3rd grade. Now, our National Assessment of Educational Progress samples students from across our nation, and we know that 2/3 of our country's 4th and 8th graders are reading below proficiency. So do you think oral language has something to do with bringing these children where they need to be? Well, look at that bullet again. Vocabulary was strongly correlated to reading comprehension scores in 3rd grade. The amount of talking in the home had a strong relationship to later vocabulary, oral language, and IQ. This was by age 3. So I'm assuming that many of us in here work with and have children that are older than 3. So we're going to move into this just a little bit. So there's this project that came out of that Hurt and Risley study, and it's called 30 million words. 30 million is the gap in vocabulary between children living in low socioeconomic homes and those living in affluent homes by age 3. 30 million words. Now, just to wrap your brain around this study, recorders were put into the homes of these families, and they just recorded the amount of talk, right? And then they tallied it all up, and that's what we found. So what does this mean for our children? Well, kids arriving at school are on an uneven playing field. Vocabulary itself, so the words that we have, both breadth and depth, so how deeply we know them and how many we know, account for 50 to 60% of the variance in reading comprehension. That's huge. What's the goal of reading, right? To gain knowledge. And if vocabulary, words, word usage, word knowledge accounts for 50 to 60% of that variance in reading comprehension, we need to work on oral language and vocabulary for sure. Most often, if kids can't say it, they can't write it either. So, which in turn affects both receptive and expressive opportunities. So speaking and writing, as well as listening and understanding. So what does this mean for us as parents? So if we're parents, for starters, we have to level that playing field and work diligently to close the achievement and opportunity gaps that pre-exist. Don't you worry, I'm going to help you. We have to plan and provide intentional and explicit opportunities for our children to build vocabulary, foster oral language in our homes. And we have to ensure our children have access to opportunities that give them the language for what they'll someday read, write, and engage with. So the point of all of this, we want all children to have the chance of knowing what to say it, how to make sense of it all, and eventually expressive, how to write it. So there's this clinical psychologist and advocate and kind of a troublemaker in the reading world, but I respect him greatly. And he says, research shows that the single most powerful predictor of the ability to overcome trauma and survive circumstances is the ability to read. And I added that right in there as well. He didn't, but I did. So what do we know from all of this? Well, oral language development is a predictor of later reading and writing success. That's what we know. So there's this model, it's a theoretical model that we utilize in education, and it's called the simple view of reading. And so what it is, it's a multiplication problem. And in a nutshell, this is how it affects you and your child. Word recognition, so being able to read the words, to get the words off the page, is one part of reading. But another part is being able to understand the language, to comprehend something if it's read to you. That then equals reading comprehension. So with the simple view of reading, we can't have one without the other. Your child or your student can't just be good word callers and get the words off the page, but then not understand the language and be a good reading comprehender. Your child can't understand the language. I mean, maybe they understands the language, but can't get the words off the page. They're not a good reading comprehender. We need both. Today, we're going to focus on language comprehension. In schools, these are the questions we ask. We say, does our student struggle with word recognition? Does our student struggle with language comprehension? Or does our student struggle with both? And then we intervene. When we talk about language comprehension today, we're going to talk about vocabulary. That's one of the pieces. And when we talk about reading comprehension and how vocabulary, which we're talking about today, makes up 50 to 60% of the variance in reading comprehension, this is a huge model for educators and for parents to keep in mind with their own child. So let's just go through some of the milestones in oral language development and think about why it's so important. So language abilities are the foundation of reading and writing. So that oral language and having that available and ready are the foundation. Now, we process language in the left hemisphere of the brain. We know so much about how the brain learns to read and write, and human brains are hardwired to speak. We're hardwired for this language. Oral language is the foundational skill for later reading and writing success. We are not hardwired for reading and writing. So we need to make sure we capitalize on helping our child and our students build their oral language and vocabulary so that they are successful readers and writers in life. This third bullet's important. Students who experience difficulties in oral language development are at risk for later reading and writing difficulties. Now that I have you hooked, we're going to get into some of these milestones and how we can help. Okay, so we'll start with communication in general, right? Your child starts communicating with you long before they say their first word. So let's look at some of these before age 5. Now, one thing to consider is it's like the internet, right? You go in there and you start thinking, oh, I'm sick, I have a cough, I have a cold, and you look through all of these symptoms, and then before you know it, you think you have something that's terminal or not good. And I don't want you to think about that when you think about these milestones. Remember, even if your child was missing one at a specific age range, doesn't mean he or she has a problem. So let's just look really quick at some of these developmental milestones, and then we'll move into some things that we can do now. So from birth to 3, right, your child startles, they smile or they quiet when you talk to them, and they recognize your voice. They coo, they cry for different needs, whether they're hungry, whether they're tired, whether they're uncomfortable, and they smile at people, don't they? From 4 to 6 months, their eyes start moving towards the sound. They're responding to change in the tone of your voice. They notice those toys that make noise, and they give attention to music, right? They start to babble, make speech-like babbling sounds. They laugh, and they make sounds if they're happy or upset. From 7 months to a year, these are just some of the things for hearing and understanding. And this is all from the American Speech, Language, and Hearing Association, if you want to follow up with that later. But they start to just improve a little, right? They're turning in the direction. They look when you point. They turn when you say her name, right? They're looking right at you. Come sit. They come over. They start to play games. They're playing peekaboo. They use gestures. Bye-bye, hello, shaking heads, no, yes. They imitate your speech sounds. And when we think about our part in this at that age range, these are just some things that, we need to keep in mind. But probably most of us are beyond this, but maybe we have some younger children at home. And it's important to know how to support all of our students before they get to kindergarten. So we have that by age 3 kind of solidified for them. Now, this last bullet here, well, the last 2 are really what I want you to pay attention to. Read to your child every day and talk to your child in the language you're most comfortable using. So 1 to 2, these are just some things in hearing and understanding and talking, right? You might recognize these or have recognized these in your child. Things that you can do to help your child at this age level, right here for you. Now remember, this isn't a recording too, so you can go back and look at this at another time. What should your child do at age 3 to 4? Right? So hearing and understanding and talking, and notice in talking what's starting to happen, right? They're using rhyming words, they're using pronouns, they're starting to answer who, what, when, where, why questions and ask them too. They're starting to put words together and use sentences. These are just some things that you can do to help. You read, you sing, you talk, you narrate your day, you look at pictures, you act out activities, and once again, you talk to your child in the language you're most comfortable using. Now here we are at pre-kinder, right? Now we're thinking our kids are about to enter kindergarten. These are some things that are big milestones that we want our students to be achieving before they enter the school system. Right? They're telling short stories, they're keeping conversations going, they're aware of audience, they're talking differently to you than they are to their teacher, than they are to a 2-year-old. These are some things that you can do with your child, right? Here we get into categorization, and with vocabulary, that's huge. We know a lot about how our brain processes all of this language and these vocabulary words, and we put them into categories in relationship to one another. So this is a good time for you to start categorizing things: fruits, vegetables, shapes, clothing, all of that. Taking turns with your child as they speak, reading stories, acting them out, retelling them, and once again, talking to your child in the language you're most comfortable using. Now here we get into some other things too. playing games, right? Playing games like I Spy, board games, helping them take turns, helping them think through and use words to express what they're doing, and just have fun. So I have a little video for you. And let me see if I can just do a new share here. I'll find it quick, I promise. It's a good one. My apologies for the delay. I'm coming. All righty. This is Charlotte. Charlotte is now 6, but we're going to take a look at Charlotte when Charlotte was 4. Okay, and I want you to take notice about how Charlotte is interacting with this book. Everybody see little Charlotte here? I'll make it bigger.
Mom and Dad's anniversary today. And Amber, leave the studio to dry. James and Sophia find Amber's portrait. James wants to paint a picture too. Then when James picks up too many cans of paint, he ruins Amber's portrait. James and Sophia try to wipe off the portrait. This makes the portrait even worse. James tries to make a new portrait. It doesn't look anything like Amber. Amber will know. Amber will know what? When Amber turns to the studio. James tells Amber he ruined her painting. Sophia has an idea, and she whispers it to Amber. Amber can't wait to get started. The anniversary arrives, and Mom and Dad, James, Sophia, and Amber are ready to give their mom and dad their portrait. This is a gift from all of us, says Amber. Our first family portrait, cries Queen Miranda. After all, says King Roland, this is our anniversary of becoming a family.
Okay, so let's think about Charlotte for a second, and let's think about Charlotte's oral language, okay? So what's Charlotte's oral language support at home like? What do you think? How might her parents be supporting her oral language development? And was she really reading? If you could find the chat and type something in the chat for us, maybe we can think about our thinking together. I'll give you about 20 seconds. Read to all the time. Thank you. Giving an opportunity to talk without interruption. No adults were speaking. Yes. She's reciting this story as she can remember it from being read to her. Yes, Holly. Her vocabulary is incredible. Yes, right? And a vocabulary is a predictor of later reading success. She used advanced vocabulary like anniversary and portrait. Her tone and her intonation, she has great expression. Yes, thank you all. What a great participation. Well, yes, Charlotte really wasn't reading that, right? Charlotte's my niece, so we're okay to have her video here, but she really wasn't reading that. She was telling the story, just as you beautifully said, from her memory of her parents reading it to her or her caregivers reading it to her. But she knew it, and she was telling it, and she was saying it in her own words, and she had those words available. When we think about vocabulary and background knowledge, they're so highly correlated together and stuck together to support reading comprehension. You have to know something to learn something. And so by building our students' vocabulary and our children's vocabulary and supporting that, then our students have the words to retrieve later to gain access to the texts that they read in school and for enjoyment. So get back on that horse of reading to your child and getting your students putting those words in their mouths so that they have them to retrieve later, so that they can gain access to more and more knowledge. So some great books to read to start with too are alphabet books, because they do support oral language development. They help children learn letter sequences. They help children associate sound symbol relationships, and they help build vocabulary. So here are just a few books. And once again, you'll have access to this later that you might find helpful for your child or your student. Now, I'm going to do a little simulation here, if you will. So, Teresa, can you unmute for me?
Yes.
Okay, Teresa. Teresa, we're going to do a little cell phone conversation, okay? I have my cell phone, and I'm just going to call you for pretend, and we're just going to have a talk, okay?
Got
All
it.
right. Okay, ring, 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 ring.
Hello.
Hey, what's up?
Not much. What's going on?
Nothing. You going to be around later?
After 6 o'clock. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I have some food for you. I made some avocado salsa that I just want to bring over if you're going to be around.
I would love that. Thank you.
Funny
Thank you.
thing though, it doesn't have avocados in it. It has smashed green peas.
Oh,
But it tastes just like it. It has the lime juice and the cilantro and the jalapeno and all of that.
I'm great with that. Oh, drop it off. Thank
All right.
you.
So 6, you said?
After 6. Yes.
Okay. All right. See you later.
See you then.
Bye.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Okay, so the thing about spoken language, like we just talked about building oral language in the home, and written language is we need both, right? We need to communicate and take turns and have cell phone conversations and everyday conversations, but we also need to get back onto the reading to your kids part and having them gain access to that too. We also need to have them hear oral language and through written text, because it's different. It's different. Listen to, I'm going to read you a little excerpt from a text, crow call, and you see if you notice the difference from my cell phone conversation, which was very informal, clipped sentences, some fragments, some ums, some slangs between Teresa and I. Now listen to this one. Here's just an excerpt from a narrative text. It is quieter than summer. There are no animal sounds, no bird waking noises. Even the occasional leaf falls within our vision, does so in silence, spiraling slowly down to bend in with the others, blend in. But most leaves are already gone from the trees. Those that remain catch there by accident, waiting for the wind that will free them. Our breath is steam. So that's a narrative excerpt. Let me read you an informational excerpt too, just a little bit, so you can tell the difference in the language and how it's more complex, right? More formal. And if we don't read to our students or give students oral language so that they can be successful in reading and writing and vocabulary, then they're not going to be able to interpret this type of language. So there are 3 main kinds of coral reefs. Fringing reefs are the most common kind of reef. They grow along the coastline, around the islands and continents. Between fringing reefs and the shore are narrow, shallow water places called lagoons. So you see the vocabulary, the sentence structure, the way it's more formal, it's more complex. So our children need both, and they need to be able to function in both and to gain spoken language and information from written language. So here's some everyday activities. And I want us to think about how we can support oral language. So we have walking your toddler up the stairs, holding onto the railing. How would you support oral language? Can you type it in the chat for me? How about the next one? Yes, counting the stairs, singing songs, counting the stairs, asking questions. What are we going to do up the stairs? Yes, sing a song about walking up the stairs. Cooking in the kitchen, just be thinking, and you don't even have to find the chat on this one. Grocery shopping with your child. Watching TV or watching a sporting event with your child or your children. Riding in a car with your child or children on a short or long trip. So I was thinking the same thing that you put in the chat, right? Where opportunities where we can count and sing, and think about how many opportunities are missed, right? We just walk up the stairs. We don't count, we don't sing, we don't start rhyming words. Cooking in the kitchen, narrate. My kids, my real kids, I have a senior and a sophomore in college right now, and they hate when I narrate everything we do. But even driving in a car, and my daughter's driving now, and I narrate everything she should be doing behind the wheel. I feel like that might never stop for me, but narrate your recipe, talk through the cooking process, the ingredients, the mixing, the frying. Grocery shopping, right? Get input for the meals, share new foods, explain how things are categorized aisle by aisle. Watching TV or a sporting event, make predictions, have that conversation, what's happening, discuss the actions. Riding in a car, there it is again, narrate your trip, right? You really want to get in there and just talk about everything you're seeing. Look at the beautiful red, orange, gold, fall leaves on the tree. I know when my kids were younger, my mom, grandma, we'd have her in the car and she would do that. Oh, look at this, look at that. And it used to get on my nerves. However, now I see grandma was right? Grandma was right. So here are just some other things that if you're a teacher or a parent, you can consider building oral language with your child or student at home. New York Times has a picture, I believe it's a picture of the week. And they ask what's going on in the picture, and they let you know after you start to dive into it and talk about it and think about what could be going on and build that oral language about it or write about it. And then they tell you what's really happening. So if you want to know what's really happening in this picture, it's a good story. Go to New York Times picture of the week and you'll be able to find out what really is the story here. But talk about it with your child and with your students first, maybe even write about it to build that oral language and communication around it. Here's another one. You want to know, right? You want to know. Well, go find out. So a lot of things that we use in school, you can also think about using at home. Create a conversation box with your child. Right? Fill it with interesting pictures like a hope chest, mementos, souvenirs from trips taken, quotes, trinkets. Go in and bring it out. Tell the story one at a time. We do this with kids in school, and we have them pull one thing out at a time if they're having trouble thinking of something to write about, or they want to share. It's kind of like show and tell, bringing something and then talking about it. But you could have this with your child at home. Just throw them in a box. Other things that you can do. Would you rather questions, playing I Spy, Simon Says, unpacking idioms. Okay, I'm gonna put you to work again. Put an idiom in the chat that you use often. It's raining cats and dogs. You'll talk your head off. Beat it. Hit the road. Can you think of one that you use? Step on the gas. I use that cooking with gas too. Now we're cooking with gas. Get out of town. Yeah. Seventh heaven. You live and you learn. Wonderful. Keep them coming. Thank you, everyone. We also use sentence starters in school as well. And a lot of times this is all a child needs to get talking. Once I lost my, what did you lose? And then they're telling you all about it. Once I was very surprised because once my family once I got really scared once, even though I tried my best, I just couldn't, what would that be? So thinking about ways that you can just engage in conversation, in turn taking, in elaboration, in building vocabulary and oral language with your child. So here's some good things that are fun for families. Joke books. Just really think about ways that you can go through the back door of learning. I know, I'm a teacher. I taught reading and writing my whole entire life. You think my kids wanted to learn reading and writing from me? No, I had to go through the back door of learning with them. Jokes is a great way to do that. Fun riddles, right? You want to tell riddles and have them solve those problems and put that language around it. Tongue twisters. That's another good one as well. Okay, some games that we're thinking about. One game in particular that I'm thinking about is headbands. The quick question game of what am I? So each player is going to draw a card with a food, a person, an animal on it, and they wear it. And then the other players are going to ask questions about the picture. And then you're going to guess what that is. Yes. Great game. Yes. Wonderful. Here's another one that I don't know if you know about. This is another game and it has multiple variations to this one, but you can play around where you list as many words you can think of to fit into a certain category. And then you guess, or you can guess a category, list a bunch of words and then guess a category. That's how we learn words in relationship to one another, not in isolation too. So this is a great game. Many of you probably have this game too, apples to apples. The green set here contains some descriptive words such as kind, cold, bold, and the red set contains people, places, things, and events. And they choose a card and the judge selects their favorite played card as the winner. So it's a good game. This one is another one, Tall Tales, and this is a game of storytelling. So I like to use this both just oral language and building that in oral rehearsal, but then also in writing as well. How many of you have played Guess Who? Right? You're describing the character, you're using language, you're taking turns. It's a great game as well. Here's another one, Scattergories. I know. Does anybody have an Amazon cart? Because just start sliding all these into your Amazon cart and grab them for your students, grab them for your kiddos. It's going to be winter pretty soon. And if you're in the Pittsburgh region, you know, days are very short. And so we need some things that we could do as family at home. Here's another great one, Tapple. And here's another one. And this is a short word game, but it's about building words too in the language for those. All righty. So just additional resources that I might point you in the direction of, definitely the American Speech, Language and Hearing Association, ASHA. Reading Rockets is another great place to visit. When we think about Reading Rockets, it's the one-stop shop for everyone, for parents, for teachers, and it just lets us know so much about how our children and our students are developing. Now there's a specific, let me grab my annotation tool here. There is a specific one that I would put you in the direction of, and you'll get this recording, but Roots of Reading. It's a video series and they're just very quick videos and they're for parents. They're centered towards parents, and it talks about building oral language in your child and ways that you can do that and support them at home and just in life in general. Another one, what I talked about was Dana Susskind's 30 Million Words. She talks a lot about what we need to do to close that gap for our students and for our children. And there's a lot of videos out there. If you just even search 30 Million Words Project, you will find that. All right, and then I also put the Hart and Risley one in here as well, if you wanted to follow up on any of that research. Okay, so I know that we're parents, we're educators, we're busy, it's lunchtime. So I wanted to make sure that I got through some of that content. I know it was rather quickly, but I knew it was going to be recorded, but I want to leave some time just for some questions or some comments that you might have surrounding oral language and how you can better support your child or the population that you're working with right now. So if you have a question or a comment or something that you want to put into the chat, please go ahead and take advantage of that right now.
Val, while we're waiting for maybe a question or a few, I wrote that down. I love that how you said sometimes you have to go in through the back door, because we see so many kids, I see, and I'm thinking of one in particular, just, preschoolers that just won't talk at all, maybe in school, and they're, mom says they're talking at home, but what are some things, and I'm getting so much from what you're saying. I'm writing down the books and writing down the games, but how to spark that, how to get that going for our little 3 and 4 year olds that won't talk. This, we have to get smart, right? We have to think smart about it and go in through the back door. And you really gave us a lot of great suggestions that I'm going to share with some of our early childhood teachers. So I wanted to say thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Definitely.
And then just piggybacking off of that too, there's a great way to engage with your child and with your students. So if you're a parent and or a teacher in the room, and one is called a 30-second conversation. So if you set a timer, I have a timer here, if you set a timer for 30 seconds and just let it go, it's a long time. It's a long time of silence. Yeah. And when you engage in 30-second conversations, basically you're saying, I'm going to have a 30-second conversation with you every day. Okay, so your child, I'm going to engage in 30 seconds. What that means, it's 30 seconds of uninterrupted talking with that child, face to face, eye to eye, only the two of you, and turn taking. Don't let it lapse. 30 seconds. In school, choose 2 to 3 kids a day to make it a point. Those kids that Teresa was just talking about now, those kids, make it a point to have a 30-second conversation with them, right? Those kids that are quiet, that are shy, that are reserved and find it hard to talk. And make it a point to find them, to track them down, to really just talk with them 30 seconds a day. Rotate through your class list if you want, but you'll see the oral language improve. Now, going back to that research of by age 3, you could get discouraged because if your child is older now and your child is in school now, and perhaps your child is struggling, and oral language is a big part of their later reading and writing success. And you know that by age 3, that is a predictor of later reading and writing success in 3rd grade. So it's not a death sentence. We're not saying that it's over for your child because they didn't meet these benchmarks, but it does create a sense of urgency for us. in the sense that we want to close that opportunity gap. We want all of our kids to be on track to be successful readers. So maybe we just have to work a little harder. Maybe we just have to plan purposeful conversations, dialogues, opportunities to build vocabulary, since it is such a great portion of reading comprehension. So don't think of it as a missed opportunity. Think of it as a fire, a sense of urgency to move forward in this important work.
I was just going to say, I think those New York Times pictures are a really great way to do that at home as well. Like, what a great way to start a conversation with your whole family at the dinner table about, you know, just looking at that picture, talking, making guesses, predictions about what it's about, and then finding out. I think I loved that and didn't know about that. And one other thing go ahead.
No, I was going to say, agree with you on that. I love that because, you know, I can think of some 5th and 6th graders right now where we're like, okay, we're going to do some writing and let's pick a topic and let's go with it. Do you know how hard that is for some of our struggling readers and writers? That's such a broad statement and they need help narrowing. What do you mean pick a topic? Like, and yeah, they might talk about dirt bike riding today, but if this is part of a writing prompt every day, they're gonna, what else do I know besides maybe dirt bike? We have to give them something where those pictures, wow, can you imagine what's, you know, how the imagination, they can be creative. So I will be visiting the New York Times.
Yeah.
That's for any age child. Just even talk about it or write about it, like you said.
Yeah. One thing to think about with that too is oral rehearsal, right? Think about the opportunity that exists there with the New York Times pictures that you're talking about, in terms of, you know, planning through what this could be about before you even go to write, because often we can't write it if we can't first say it. So giving students an opportunity to rehearse through it, to think about when you're going on a job interview. You know, I always say, you're going on a job interview. You're in the car, you're on the way there. What are you doing? You're rehearsing, you're rehearsing, you're rehearsing. You're in the mirror, you're drying your hair before the job interview. What are you doing? You're rehearsing, you're rehearsing, rehearsing. And so many times with our children and our students, we just throw them into the ice water without that practice of oral rehearsal first. Remember, I said you have to know something to learn something. Well, you also have to have that to retrieve it. So if they orally rehearse it, then they have that. It's like vocabulary, right? If they have the vocabulary, then they can retrieve it and they can connect it to the text that they're reading and across content too. One other thing that I want to share too is, if you're a parent or a teacher, use the content to drive all of this. Even go back to headbands. When we're talking about headbands and you're taking a word and you're putting it on your head and you're having others guess it, you can't see the word, but imagine using their vocabulary words for a story, for a content, for anything that they're learning in school, for science, for social studies, for math, and you're putting those words and others are describing or they're describing, right? And you're taking turns. Great way back door of learning to get your child engaged in that work.
Absolutely. And I think at all ages, like you said, you practice, you orally rehearse before you have an interview, or I did today before I did your introduction. And I use this with my college students because people tend to not talk as much in class and they have the mask on. And I find that like the more I allow them to turn to their partner and talk about what I want them to, you know, and eventually answer to the whole class, they use it and it makes them much more comfortable about what they're going to say, because everybody gets a little nervous when they have to talk in front of people. So that's a really great point. And I also just wanted to bring up and maybe ask you too, Val, what you think about. So I was thinking while you were talking about vocabulary and background knowledge, and thinking too about how that also kind of makes students successful in those higher level skills, like inferring, right? Reading between the lines. Like if they have that vocab and they have that background knowledge, I think they're probably more adapt to doing, some of those higher level skills.
Yes. And so when we think about those language comprehension skills, when I showed you the simple view of reading at the beginning, and a lot of times we focus on getting students to the point where they can read, but we don't understand the language piece that is underneath the foundational skills that need to be in place for them. It's easier for them to read the word too when they have the word in their lexicon. That means they have it available and ready to them. And Sarah's talking about those upper skills, those critical skills. So when we talk about word recognition, we're talking about getting the words off the page through phonological awareness, like hearing the sounds, right? Alphabetic principle and decoding, blending and decoding those words so that they can say them and read them as words. And then sight word recognition, where they're just looking at the word and it's kind of popping off the page because they've already decoded it so many times they have it. Yeah. So that's word recognition. But Sarah's talking about the upper strands, like thinking about vocabulary, language, background knowledge. She's talking about verbal reasoning. So giving students opportunities to make inferences and access metaphors, right? Identify metaphors. She's talking about knowledge of genre. So do our children and our students have access to knowing about informational text structures, right? Do they know that there's problem solution, there's cause and effect, there's sequential order, this, then, next, last, and those are all informational text structures, right? Do they, yeah, all of that in the upper strands. And it's all, I mean, we have to consider reading and not neglect any of the components, but we have such a good opportunity through oral language and vocabulary to really lay that foundation for later reading and writing success for our students. Another thing that goes back to that too, when we think about speech and hearing together, is part of word recognition because we're thinking about the phonology piece. And I know it's Dyslexia Awareness Month and we all have a heart for dyslexia. And so being able to pronounce the word, to actually have the correct phonological form of the word helps us attach it to meaning and store it with meaning so we can retrieve it and use it appropriately later. So you want to make sure that your students and your children at home say words correctly, right? It's really cute when they say Piccini. However, they're not attaching it correctly to meaning and in those semantic fields, right? So we want to make sure that they have the appropriate word and they have the correct phonological form.
Excellent. Are there any questions?
I was just looking to see. I don't.
Yeah, want to make sure we're not missing any. Val, oh, go ahead.
Katie has something in there. She said, I really like how you talked about the importance of categorizing words. She said it would be cool to use headbands and have students put themselves in categories. Yeah, that's how our brain learns words, right? We don't learn words in isolation. And I don't know if any of us, when we talk about vocabulary, remember learning words as elementary students, right? We had a list of words on Monday, we wrote the definition, we wrote a sentence for them. And oftentimes, if we're parents, that's how we approach that type of learning with our kids because that's what we think is right. But that's really not how we learn words. We don't store words in isolation. We store them in our brain in relation to other words that have a relationship to that word. And places that we use that word, multiple meaning words, multiple situations that we would encounter that word. So it's in relationship to other words. So categorizing, that's why I included a lot of games that included categorization. So thank you, Katie, for that comment.
Mm-hmm. I had a little girl tell me yesterday that we were talking about there and putting it in the correct context. And she's like, oh, we play the homonym game at dinner every night. And I was like, oh, that was just so neat to hear. She's a fourth grader and you can tell, I mean, her vocabulary is very rich. So she, that's awesome. You can tell she's getting that at home and they're having fun with it.
Yeah. One thing that I will share with you too, because Teresa just said the student's vocabulary, the child's vocabulary was very rich. Sometimes oral language doesn't come easy for students. Sometimes there are other things that are involved, one of which could be a developmental language disorder. So you might want to, if you are thinking about some things and wondering about your child, I'm going to put in the chat DLD and me, and it's Dr. Tiffany Hogan. And she has some good resources in terms of, just thinking through developmental language disorder and what that all entails in case you have concerns over the language development of your child.
That's excellent. I'm glad you brought that up, Val. That developmental language disorder. We can learn so much about that, just helping kids with language, helping kids with just the pragmatics of having a conversation with one another. And so I'm really glad you brought that up. Definitely a great resource. Thank you.
So a participant put into the chat, thank you for your time today. This was incredibly helpful and reassuring to a parent of a kiddo that's been trying to learn to read in a hybrid environment. Yes, of home versus in school. It's nice to hear that even when we are struggling with the assignments, that the games we are playing and the books we are enjoying are just as enriching. There's also a hybrid version of the Guess Who and Clue that is a wonderful game as well. So thanks for that.
Oh, yeah, that's great to know. Guess Who? Okay, good. Well, Sarah, what do you think? I think this has been a wonderful, Val, this has been an amazing hour with you. You have really just the oral language development, this whole topic has been fantastic. I'm walking away with a lot today.
Right.
And I'm sure our guests are too. This is going to be a great recording. I'm super excited to put this on our site at Wheeling Country Day under the Center for Multisensory Learning. And Sarah,
Yes,
your site,
we'll
it'll be under
under our site.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
that's fantastic. This is
I just want to jump on 1 second, say, from what Holly said, it is really important to know and have these things that Val talked about today in your brain and on your mind, because I know how hard it has been with COVID and having your kids back and forth and quarantining and then back in school. And so to know that you're doing things at home that, you're giving them what they need, even if it's just having fun through these games and reading with them, it's so important. So you're doing a great job with that, and keep that up, because that's what they need.
Excellent. Great.
Yeah, so we will send out information also about our upcoming series, lunchtime series, guests and presentations. So
and spread the word. Please, when you get these links, share them with whoever you want. We want this to grow, and we want to just spread the word, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thank you so much,
everyone.
Val Piccini from Carlow University. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was great to be here.
You're welcome. Thank you.